Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Another week, another episode. This is Stats Over Politics. As always, I'm your host, Sean Holko, alongside my guy, Mr. Jaevon, Toddy, Garry Singh, and Kevin Denner, unable to join us tonight, but we will see them soon, hopefully. And anyways, Jaevon, we just had a great day of college football to kick off the 2024 sports schedule. What did you think about it?
Oh, a lot of ups and downs today. Had a parlay, 4-teamer steam New Year's parlay. We've hit a New Year's parlay a couple years ago. I'll never forget it. It was I think it was like a 5-team steam. It might have been. I don't know if it was like. No. It was like a New Year's parlay. It was like a 5-teamer, and it came down. Ohio State fans probably remember this. It was the Utah Rose Bowl game 2 years ago. It all came down to who was it? C.J. Stroud and Cam Rising. They went at it. Today, not so lucky. You know, we had Bama. We were screaming blitz Bama blitz all weekend, and it came down to the final play. Jalen Milroe runs a QB sneak up the middle. But we'll get into all of that stuff. But Niners are number 1 seed, so there have been better days.
The Niners sure are the number 1 seed, and you and I both love it. Kevin, not so much. Garry probably doesn't love the fact that his hated rival, the Baltimore Ravens, are now the number 1 seed in the AFC as well. We're going to get into all that here on episode number 71, a football-heavy episode, as we're going to kick things off by getting into the games that we saw today in the college football playoff semifinals. Then we're going to get to the NFL, recap Week 17, and get to 3 games in depth. And then we are going to close things out with Vonny's Hotline. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. As the first game of today in the college football playoff semifinals was Michigan beating Alabama 27-20 in overtime of the Rose Bowl. It was a really great game, Jaevon. You and I both picked Alabama to win this game, and so unfortunately we were wrong. But just take us through what you saw in this game between Michigan and Alabama.
I kind of expected this game to be lower scoring. Overtime helped the point total a little bit more than I thought it would be. But early on in the game, Michigan's sole purpose was to heat up Jalen Milroe every single chance that they got, and it showed earlier. I believe in the first half Michigan got 5 sacks. And this was more of a defensive battle, I'd say, for 3.5 quarters for the most part. And then kind of just at the end, we kind of saw. I knew that the game plan. I said this last week on the podcast that Michigan's game plan was going to try to, get Blake Corum involved in any shape or fashion, whether that's obviously he's going to get involved in the run game, but we saw him in the passing game a little bit too, being able to catch swing routes out of the backfield and be effective. So Jalen Milroe, for the most part of the game, I don't think in the beginning they weren't really able to use his legs as much. I thought that just them being able to, or Michigan kind of being able to just blitz and rush the passer fairly well, and limiting Jalen Milroe to only two completions for the better part of the first half. Kind of just toward the end, I thought Bama could have tried to get Jermaine Burton involved a little bit more earlier. I thought Chase McLaughlin got a little bit. I think I've definitely butchered his last name, but Chase, the running back for Alabama, was involved early in the game, and I thought that they could have used Jalen Milroe in the run game a little bit more, and that probably would have helped them to their extent. But got to give your hats off to Michigan. Coach Harbaugh has a lot of guts going forward at the end of the game on fourth down, and that was probably the biggest play of the game, to be honest, because Alabama was definitely up 20-13. They were down. It was 4th and 2, and they were on their side of the field, and Corum turns that swing route into like a 35-yard gain, and they get all the way down, and ultimately end up scoring. And damn near had a chance at the end, but the muff punt kind of screwed them, and that almost could have ended it right there, with the safety almost being had at the end of the game. And ultimately, the game ends up going to overtime. Alabama defers to Michigan. Michigan comes right out, punches them in the face, and says, "Hey, what are you going to do?" I just thought there were some questionable play calls at the end for Alabama. I don't think they gave Milroe that many chance. I feel like they could have gave him a little bit better chance. He had the solid run in overtime to kind of set them up for first and goal, but the goal line plays were just kind of like, what the fuck? The final play was supposed to be a swing route to the running back, Chase, or Sean can probably look up his last name for me real quick. It was supposed to be
McLaughlin.
McClellan. There we go.
McCullen. Okay.
Yeah.
You had
Chase
the make part right.
Yeah, Chase McClellan. So it was supposed to be a swing route. Both of the receivers on the side they were supposed to throw the ball to were matched up on two cornerbacks, and they were supposed to block downfield for him. It was set up pretty nice, but it looks like that Milroe kind of fumbled the snap. He kind of was dealing with bad snaps the entire game, and I feel like the bad snap kind of hindered him from being able to get the swing route out on time. And then, he tried to run up the middle, and that went nowhere. There are other angles where people were saying that he was supposed to follow his guard. That was a designed run. I think it was probably an RPO. So he had the chance to throw the swing route to McCullen on the 4th down play, or he could have ran it. But you got to give hats off to Milroe, or not to Milroe, to JJ McCarthy. His numbers were okay. He did throw for 3 touchdowns. You got to give him credit where credit is due. I don't think that he was the reason. He made some key plays, but he got really stagnant in the 3rd quarter. I thought Michigan's defense was very outstanding today, and kind of I feel like was the MVP of the day, being able to create 5 sacks on Jalen Milroe, and pretty much all drive killers those sacks are. And we even heard Coach Saban say that at his post-half interview when he was going into halftime. He said that. So got to give the hats off to Michigan. The over somehow hits in this game, which is pretty crazy. But Michigan, they did what they were supposed to do. They ran the ball well. That's kind of what's been their MO the entire season. Is the run game is going to take them places that could possibly be the national championship game. And your quarterback really just has to make a couple of key 3rd down conversions, hit a couple of crossing routes here, hit like the huge 4th down play that he had was a big chunk of his yards, I'd say. I wouldn't say the majority of his yards, but he was hitting a lot of key crossing routes. Got to give credit to Roman Wilson. He was the he went 4 for 73 yards in this game, and he had the key touchdown late in the game. But I thought Alabama had a bunch of chances to kind of put the game away when they were up 13-17. They had a chance to, instead of going to kick the field goal, they were sacked on that third down play that kind of kept the game within reach. And, Michigan ended up marching down the field. And we kind of saw throughout the game, Michigan respond. So when Alabama went up 7-0, Michigan came down and scored a touchdown kind of on the next drive. Because early in the game, literally the first play of the game, McCarthy throws a pick, but Caleb Downs steps out of bounds right before he catches a pick. And so it's illegal touching. And so that kind of nullifies the interception. But the special teams wasn't really that good, I'd say, kind of on both sides. You had muff punts here and there, some questionable kick returns that maybe shouldn't have been returned. But Michigan, I'd say, didn't really hold their end of the bargain on. They had a bunch of miscues on special teams, but Alabama, their kicker should definitely be singing their praises because he stepped up in big moments, hit multiple 50-yard field goals to give his team a chance to win. But all in all, I feel like, pretty much the whole nation was on Alabama, even though they were underdogs. I think a lot of people were betting on Nick Saban to kind of come out.
Roll Tide.
Yeah, including myself, to kind of come out on top. But I thought Michigan had better players, and that's saying a lot because usually Alabama, on any given Saturday, usually has the better team and better coach. So for Michigan to kind of come out and play the way that they did, I thought Michigan had better players on defense and on offense, and it showed today. And Michigan was able to come out on top.
Yeah, for most of this game, I thought that special teams was going to be the difference in this game. As you highlighted, the Alabama kicker had 2 50-plus yard field goals in this game. When Jalen Milroe took that sack in the fourth quarter, when Alabama potentially could have advanced further into Michigan territory and potentially put the game away with a touchdown and make it a 2-score game, for the kicker to still step up with such a long field goal and be able to nail it after Michigan's kicker struggled in this game, I thought that was going to be the difference. And as you mentioned as well, Michigan just overall, in my opinion, Alabama had a very strong game from their special teams between the kicker and then even there was that one play, I think it was in the third quarter, where Alabama is about to just let the punt return just trickle away. And then it like brushes up against the defender's ankle, and the returner had the awareness to dive right on the ball because it could have easily been Michigan ball. And so I thought that special teams was going to be the difference in this game. And for the most part, this game went exactly how I expected it to. Michigan came out, punched him in the mouth. Alabama hung in there. And the thing that I kept saying to my friend Keith, who's a Michigan fan, and he was going crazy throughout this entire game, is the fact that Michigan seemed to dominate the time of possession. And for the most part, this game for arguably the first 2.5 quarters at least, but yet they were only up 3 for most of it until Alabama goes up 17-13 and then 20-13. But what I did not expect in this game is how Michigan was able to be resilient and JJ McCarthy was able to lead them on that late fourth quarter drive. As you mentioned, the play of the game has to be when Harbaugh goes for it on 4th down in his own territory, 3 minutes left, because there is no guarantee that they get the ball back at that point. And so for Harbaugh to have the cojones to be able to do that, props to him, as 49ers fans and for me as an Ohio State fan as well. I don't necessarily love Jim Harbaugh anymore, but you got to give the man credit where it's due. And also give credit to JJ McCarthy. Give credit to Wilson is the name of the receiver for Michigan that made the play late. Yeah, Roman Wilson, who's from Hawaii. He made that great play late in the game and kind of redeemed himself. And so props to him for coming up big after having a very quiet game. Alabama did a very good job of limiting Michigan's playmakers in this game up until super late in the game when they obviously tied it. And then in overtime, I was just really impressed. Like, as an Ohio State fan, I'm going to talk a lot of shit about Michigan. It's hard for me to even give props to the team up north, but this is a sports podcast. I'm going to tell it how I see it. And I was genuinely impressed by how they were able to push through in that fourth quarter to not only tie the game, but once they got it into overtime, Blake Corum said after the game that he was talking to his guys and he was saying, if we just go and tie this game, I know we're going to win it in overtime. It's not we think we're going to win it overtime. I know we're going to win it overtime. Michigan, they came right down the field. It looked like they scored so easily in overtime. And then it was much more difficult for Alabama. Obviously, they ultimately get stuffed on, it was like 4th and goal is what it was ultimately late in that game. And as you mentioned, Jalen Milroe had options on that play, but for the most part, it just looked like he just ran straight up in the gut and got stuffed. But, props to Michigan, because all jokes aside and them failing in the semifinals the last 2 years before this, I just thought that they were going to do that exact same thing, and that Alabama was going to do Alabama things. They have the most wins in the first 10 years of the college football playoff for a reason, because Alabama is always in it. And I was just really impressed by Michigan's ability to overcome all of that. They're still cheaters, but it's okay. And,
Ohio
the
State
Huskies.
fan, guys. Yeah.
Hey, where's Connor Stallions? Where's he at? Because he must have been on the Alabama sideline today, or anyways, I'm sorry. I just gave Michigan so much credit and I just tore it all down and my bias shined through. But that's typically how it goes as an Ohio State fan. Did you saw? I mean, I think you were the one who sent it to me. There were those fans. There was like 4 Ohio State fans who were at the Rose Bowl today wearing a shirt that said Ohio State fan rooting for Michigan,
Yep.
or rooting for Alabama. Because they were anti-Michigan, and I just thought that was hilarious. Like, I would never pay that much money to go and root against my rival. But hey, if you got it like that, then you got it like that. But do you have any final thoughts on this Rose Bowl game before we get to the Sugar Bowl?
Yeah, so I saw a stat, or I heard a stat on the broadcast. They said that Alabama, when leading 7-0, was 66-0. You can make that 66-1 now. And this is the first time since 2014 that an SEC Alabama team will not be represented in the college football.
Wow.
In the championship. So non-SEC, no Alabama, no SEC team being represented in the championship game since 2014. And I think we remember who that 2014 team was. It was the old Buckeyes. Stack team. I think that was Cardell Jones' team, right? That won it all. So
yep.
Magical run for those guys. But I just think to just kind of going back to the committee and the whole playoff selection and kind of how that went. I thought for the most part these games today came down literally to the last play, and you really couldn't ask for any better. There are some arguments still kind of being made out there, not for Florida State, because Florida State got absolutely obliterated. Maybe we might get into that a little bit later, but you could have made a case for Georgia, kind of. They probably can play. This is why I love the 12-team playoff, because this will kind of eliminate everything that we're kind of talking about right now. But I believe that Georgia could have played with either of these teams today. Just going back on looking at bowl season and everybody that's kind of been playing, that was, in that mix of top 4 seed. I feel like the only team that really could have hung with any of these teams today would have probably been Georgia. And yeah, it was just a hell of a day. Games were absolutely. And the 12-team playoff is going to make it even better, because you're going to get home games for these schools. It's just going to be even greater, to be honest, once we start adding more games in the 12-team playoff. They might even extend it to 16. I'm not sure if they do that, but 12 seems like a solid amount.
Yeah, it's a good start for sure, because then you no longer have the Georgias of the world being left out when, like you said, Georgia, I think, was very deserving, but they probably just didn't want to put Georgia in there because they knew if Alabama gets in, Texas has to get in, because Texas is a Power 5 champion. They beat Alabama. Okay, you got to put them in. Obviously can't leave out the 2 undefeated Power 5 champions unless they're Florida State missing their starting quarterback. And we saw them get exposed. And shout out to Georgia for proving to Florida State and all their fans what most of us already knew and why they were ultimately left out of the playoff. But a 12-team playoff, it prevents teams like Florida State from being left out because then they can get in there. They can get embarrassed in the first round, and then we can all move on with our lives. Or maybe they even pull off an upset in the first round, because right now with the 12-team format, the top 4 seeds will get that first round bye, and then you have 5 through 12 duking it out in the first round. And so who knows? Maybe they win in the first round to get smacked in the semifinal, somewhere around there. But anyways, I'm looking forward to the 12-team playoff as well. But we still have another week of this format. And so real quickly, Jaevon, before we move on to the Sugar Bowl, I just wanted to read off some comments from our Instagram live broadcast.
Because we are live on Instagram, guys.
We are live on Instagram, second week in a row. And I appreciate the Toddy parents for engaging with us on Instagram as well. As T at Dat Niner Chick, she says, we had some great football games today, down to the wire. It'll be a great championship game with 2 undefeated teams. Who you got? We're going to get into that in just a little bit, T. And she also says, where's the Eagle fan host? Yeah, he's taking care of his puppy. And so I understand that. And Big Mun, a.k.a. Big Toddy, says, look at my mini-me talking sports like he knows something. I'm LeVar, never lost. And and then he goes on to say, he said, "Aw, damn, V. Lonester. Harbaugh has coached in the NFL and has been successful." And T said, "I love Harbaugh. Great coach with SF and Michigan." And then also our guy James is tapping in with us on Instagram. And he says, "F the Tide," with a bunch of shake my head emojis. It is what it is at this point. And so, Jaevon, now moving on to the second game of today, as number 2 Washington beat number 3 Texas 37-31 in the Sugar Bowl. The game wasn't that close up until maybe about 5 minutes to go when Texas gets that touchdown to cut it to a 1-score game. But or what was it? It was a field goal that cut it to a 1-score game after Washington got their own field goal as well. Anyways, it was a lot closer down the stretch, and it was ultimately because a Washington player, one of their top receivers, he ends up getting hurt. It was Johnson, right? He ended up getting hurt within the last minute of the game. He ultimately, they have to call a timeout. That left about an extra 30 seconds for Texas, who drives all the way into the red zone, but ultimately they get shut out. And Washington holds on for the win 37-31 in the Sugar Bowl. They advance to the college football playoff championship game. And so we both picked, I picked Washington. You picked Texas in this game. And so what led to the Huskies pulling off the win here?
So pretty much going back to last week, I didn't give my pick, but I kind of was hinting that I was going to take Texas. We didn't have the show on Friday. But as you guys already known from the previous segment, that I had Alabama and definitely had Texas in kind of the rematch that it was supposed to be. But obviously that did not happen today. But kind of just going back to the game, I just think Washington's offense is very, very high powered. Penix threw for 430 today. Absolutely shredded the secondary of Texas. I think what the problem was for Texas, it was kind of just a mismatch throughout the entire game for Texas's secondary. And I mentioned this on last week's podcast. I said that kind of what would be the mismatch for Texas was Penix and his wide receivers, his trio that he has. I mentioned that if Washington is going to have a shot at winning this game, their receivers are going to have to go absolutely bonkers. And I mentioned Rome Odunze. Polk didn't really do. I mean, Polk was he had 5 for 122, but McClellan, McMillan was the other guy. Jalen McMillan, that was the other guy that I thought would get a little bit more involved, but it was Polk in this game. But Odunze is a top 10, 15 receiver.
He's him.
He is exact. Yes, he is him. I think what was, they were just able to get matchups, nightmares all over the field for these guys. You couldn't cover them, and it showed. Michael Penix is definitely shooting up on everybody's draft board. I'm not sure where he was before this game, but I remember that he was in. People were saying that he was going to be like a second round pick, like before.
Mel Kiper has him as his 5th ranked quarterback right now. Number 5.
Yeah, five guys better than Penix. I don't see it.
I know one, and his name is Caleb Williams. I know one. I don't know. I don't know if I'm taking Bo Nix over him. I don't know if I'm taking Jaden Daniels over him.
No, he's better than Bo Nix. I think he's better than Bo Nix. I think he's better than Jaden Daniels. The other guy that supposed to go over him is Drake May. That's what they're saying. That is true.
So maybe top 3, but top 5 seems a little too far.
If you just watch him play and his deep ball accuracy, his accuracy down the field is like top tier. Like he would be like, it'd be a dream for a bunch of NFL wide receivers to have Penix throwing him the ball. Just the way that he throws the ball down the field is uncanny, and it showed tonight. I thought Texas's defense would show up and be a little bit better than it was, but Penix kind of just ripped through anything that I thought Texas would have been able to do. Their run defense was it was okay for the most part, that being in Texas, but their secondary was getting torn. Now, it seems that they had a star safety who is a freshman. He was out for a half because he got called for a targeting call in the Big 12 title game, and he didn't come in until the second half of this game. I don't know if that would have changed anything, really. But Texas, it was a wild finish because at the end of the game, I feel like the difference in this game was definitely penalties and turnovers. Texas had 10 penalties. Washington had 5, and Texas had 2 turnovers. Washington had 1. That was the most fun, and there were no turnovers on Michael Penix's end. It was the special teams turnover. But Texas having the turnover or losing the turnover battle, fumbling multiple times in that game, kind of giving Washington, chances to go up by 2 scores. And we were seeing that it was kind of come down to who was going to have the ball last. And if for a second there, it looked like Texas was. But kind of at the end, weird things kind of happened. You had the injury to a player, and that stops the clock because Washington has to use an injury timeout, saving like 30 seconds on the clock. And then Texas gets the kick catch interference, and that puts them in great field position. I think they started at the 30, and then Texas has the huge pass down the sideline, ultimately getting within, I think, to like the 12-yard line. Thought there was a genius call at the end by DeBoer. I don't think DeBoer is calling the defense, but they heated up Quinn Ewers at the end to kind of, throw him off balance. Didn't really give him that much time to throw. And he had at least a second left, which was insane. I thought the game was over. But if you watch the clock back, he got it in with at least 2 seconds left. Thought it was clever that he threw it to somebody on the sideline instead of like throwing it out of bounds, because that may or may not have taken like another second off the clock. So I thought that was pretty heady of him. But you saw, I think the 2 best receivers in this game were Rome Odunze and A.D. Mitchell. Another guy who I mentioned on last week's podcast, A.D. Mitchell, is Texas's wide receiver. I'm not sure if I think he's eligible. I think he is.
I feel like Texas is going to bring back a lot of their main guys, because that's kind of what they were saying at the end of the broadcast is like Quinn Ewers could. Yeah,
I knew Ewers was going to come back because he already mentioned that he was going to come back this year. And, in the group chat, they were saying it's Arch time. And
Arch Manning's going to come to Ohio State because Quinn Ewers is going to stick around.
But A.D. Mitchell, that's kind of what you would have drawn up at the end. It was a hell of a play by the defensive back to make that play. It was kind of a tough catch because I get A.D. was trying to make the catch, but you could have argued that he could have jumped, but if he would have jumped to try and grab the pass, he probably would have been out of bounds. And that kind of went into the game. So he was trying to stay in bounds. The ball could have been placed a little bit better, but I guess the last play of the game, no timeouts left, fourth down, trying to go to the national championship. So a bunch is at stake there. So you got to give your hats off to Texas for basically fighting to literally the last exact play of the game. And a lot of NFL players on this field, from the quarterbacks to the receivers, the D-line. Sweat is going to be one of those guys too. I'm not sure if he's draft eligible, but he'll definitely be in the NFL. But I think with this win for Washington, you're kind of looking at the matchup between Washington and Michigan, who the odds are already out. Michigan is favored by, I'm saying 4.5, so about 4 points is what the spread is. Michigan is being favored. You're getting the tale of two polar opposite teams. You got a high-powered offense in Washington that can score, put up 500 yards in a game, and you got a team in Michigan that wants to run the shit out of the ball and manage the clock. And their defense is top-notch too as well. So we're going to see, man, bro, they might be on the hotline. I'm not even going to lie. This game might be on the hotline. But it's been a crazy weekend of football. I thought this was insane. I thought the committee got it right. There were a bunch of great bowl games too. Going into not the Oregon game, but really there weren't really any good games today.
That Ohio State game on Friday was dog shit, and not just because they lost.
It was I thought there were a bunch of good bowl games, but just touching on the Missouri game, I did hint that Missouri was going to win in the group chat.
Yeah,
I'm looking at a bunch of the opt-outs. Ohio State didn't have as many opt-outs as I thought. They just had Marvin Harrison Jr., and I think they had a couple of injuries too. Plus, they had McCord injury, and Devin Brown, he gets hurt. And so you guys have a fourth stringer in the game who doesn't know he's a true freshman, doesn't know what the fuck is going on. So, and then I just looked at Missouri's roster. They have a young team, but a lot of their dudes who are like sophomores are going to go to the NFL next year. There's not draft eligible right now, so you got guys like Luther Burden and Brady Cook making plays all over the place. But Ohio State's defense, for the most part, was the key in this game. They were getting stops pretty much left and right. It was just their offense was unable to move the ball. So hats off to the Tigers. They're probably gonna. I think Missouri is gonna make the playoff next year in the 12-team playoff. I think they'll make the playoff for sure. They're one of the top 12 best teams in the country.
So if that's the case, I don't want to get off on a whole tangent here, but I got to follow up on this. If that's the case, how many teams out of the SEC are making the playoff?
Oh, no, it's going to be a bunch
Alabama.
It's going to be Big Ten.
Alabama, Georgia, Texas,
yeah,
Mizzou. That's 4 right there. Yeah, that's a third of the playoff.
There's going to be a shit ton of Big Ten and SEC teams in the playoff next year. I just want you'll see one Big 12 team.
Yeah. 10 out of 12 teams are going to be from those two conferences.
You'll get one from the ACC and one from the Big 12, and everybody else will probably be from the SEC. I think. Now there might be maybe two or three from the other conferences. I'll say that. Maybe even 4.
All right.
From the other conferences. Whether that's 3 from the Big 12 and 1 from the ACC, or 3 from the ACC and 1 from the Big 12, because it's starting to they're starting to become super conferences now. And pretty soon, it'll probably just be like the NFL, AFC versus NFC. Exactly. But whatever, it might be Big Ten versus SEC. That might be the 2 conferences that'll be left standing. But, next year can't come any sooner. But hats off to the Huskies and hats off to the Michigan Wolverines. It was an insane day of football. Couldn't be more happier. I was glued to my TV.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really looking forward to the expansion with the 12-team playoff and all those teams, whoever will be participating in next year's playoff. As we know, it's going to be on New Year's Day next year. Whoever makes it, that'll be revealed later this year, because here we are on January 1st, 2024. And so, Jaevon, before we get to the 12-team playoff, we do have to finish out with this 4-team playoff. And I just want to give a shout out to Uncle Manny real quick for always tapping in with us on YouTube. As he says, great evening of college football. Have a great show. We appreciate you, Uncle Manny. And so, Jaevon, it is on record that you picked Texas to defeat Alabama in the college football playoff championship game. That's obviously not going to happen now. And so let's just take a moment to make predictions for the college football playoff championship game between number 1 Michigan and number 2 Washington. As you noted earlier, some lines are different, but for right now, we're just going to say Michigan is favored -4 points. And so you can give us your betting take on it and also just the money line take of who you got winning this championship game, because I got the Huskies.
It's tough, man, because this matchup is it's polar opposite. So it's going to be Michigan's going to want to try and control the pace of the game by being able to run the ball. But they're going to have to be able to match the high-powered Washington offense. And Washington's kind of proved time and time again. And going back to the Pac-12, last Pac-12 championship game ever.
RIP.
That they were 10-point dogs going into that game. 10-point dogs. And I think they were plus like 300. Plus 300 dogs in that game and kind of handled Oregon pretty handily. Now, Washington's defense isn't like they're going to hold you to 3 points, but they get timely stops, I think. And that's and I feel like that's kind of what they need. They don't need to, hold this team to do this and that. But I'm looking at this Michigan team against this Alabama team. Alabama has a solid defense, but Michigan doesn't really put up points like that. And I feel like they're going to need, I think everyone would believe that Penix is the better quarterback. So I would lean Huskies here. Just given off the fact that
I love it.
What I saw today from, guys like, I don't think anyone's going to be able to stop Roma Dunze at all. I think Penix can have a type of day similar to this, but I think Michigan's secondary is pretty good. I think they have a great front seven. I think Michigan will probably have like 15 dudes drafted from this team, which is a shit ton. They got a lot of NFL talent on this team, but I just think their offense, like I watched Washington and like, who can stop this? Now, Washington almost shot themselves in the foot late in the game.
Almost gave it away.
It kind of goes back to the time of possession. Can Michigan be able to run? I think they'll be able to run on this Washington team. If it comes, I don't think Michigan wants to get into a shootout with this team. They want to be able to control the pace of the game. They want to be able to control the clock. And, McCarthy, he had the 3 touchdowns today, but he went 17 for 17 or 22 today for 220 yards. 222 yards through the air is not going to get it done against this.
You know what will? 430 yards like Michael Penix had tonight.
And
second most in a semifinal, only behind Joe Burrow. That's a good list to be on.
I'm just getting to the point where do I want to bet against Michael Penix Jr. And it has not went well. Did not go well for me today. But Penix, Polk, McClellan, those guys, man, they're just tough to stop. I would lean Washington here. Money line. They're plus 180. They're plus 180. So it's like Michigan would have to be able to control. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of it's McCarthy versus Penix. Who's the better quarterback? I think it's Penix by a mile, and it's not even close. And I don't see Michigan getting in a shootout with Washington. So it's going to be Michigan trying to run the ball, keep Penix off the field, limit his possessions. And that's the only way I would see Michigan being able to win. Because if Penix gets the ball, scores first drive, that puts pressure on Michigan to be like, oh shit, we can't just run the ball. Let's just say Washington comes out, scores first drive of the game, it's 7-0. Okay. Shit. Michigan has to come down and score they don't. They punt the ball back to Washington. Washington gets the ball back again and scores. It's 14-0. Their whole game plan changes. So I'm just going back to like today. I'm looking at offenses like the Tennessee Iowa game today was the Nico. I can't really pronounce his last name. He's like Samoan. He's Pacific Islander, who I think is going to be the guy that's going to be next up as one of the like top college quarterbacks, just going into next year. They played against Iowa today, and Iowa basically can't move the ball. And I'm not saying that Michigan can't move the ball, but I'm kind of going on it as a standpoint of you got a prolific type offense versus like a team that's built to like stop the run the ball pretty solidly, and you have a game manager type quarterback. Michael Penix is more of a game changer, kind of quote Cam Newton here, but and then I'm looking at it from Oregon. They kind of just steamrolled their quarterbacks pretty solid, and Bo Nix. But I'm looking at Washington, and it's like, how the fuck are you going to stop this offense? I get their defense isn't up to par, but it's going to be like, all right, like we can get into a shootout with you guys, and we believe that we're going to be able to score more points than you. And I think Michigan has the better defense, probably has the better team, but I'm looking at this offense like, hey, offense can get their defense can get timely stops. They can force turnovers. They proved that today. They forced turnovers. They didn't really have that many penalties. They had 5 throughout the whole entire game, and this offense is putting up 500 yards plus. So like, let's look at what did
Real quickly, I'll just say that the Tennessee quarterback that you were alluding to with the Samoan last name is Nico Imaliva, the funniest name in this transfer portal era.
He's a true freshman. So he's gonna be. I'm telling you, you can stamp me right now. He's gonna be one of them ones coming like top quarterbacks, like coming out draft NFL. Like he's gonna be that. He's gonna be.
Does he finish his career though at Tennessee, or does he play into the last name and enter the portal?
I think so. I think he's
okay.
Tennessee.
We shall see. Regardless of where he is, I believe you.
He should have played this year, to be honest. Like, I just think it was just a politicky thing. They already had Joe Millen. They were promising. He'd been there for a while. He had transferred from Michigan and was kind of promised the job, and ended up getting the year to start. But I think Nico, he's gonna be one of the ones for sure. But no, Michigan had 300. They had 130 rush yards versus 221 pass yards. So 351 yards total. Washington had a total of, it was like, 532 yards. So that's 200 more yards than today. I'm just looking at it from Michigan's going to have to match Washington's offense, and that's going to be a problem. And I think the matchups that they have on Washington is going to be like you got mismatches, like you got 3 NFL receivers on your team versus I think Roman Wilson will definitely be an NFL wide receiver, but it's kind of you got Blake Corum, you have Roman Wilson, you have McCarthy, who's more of a game manager. Can he elevate to like you can go blow for blow with Michael Penix? I don't see that happening. So I would lean Washington in this game.
Yeah, I do think that JJ McCarthy could, just based on how they were able to come back late in this game. That made me believe. I've always liked JJ McCarthy, but even as an Ohio State fan, but as much as I don't want to lie, yeah, he sure is, never lost. But you know, after what I saw from JJ McCarthy today in the biggest of situations, I do think that he could go blow for blow with Michael Penix. But the thing I would say in regard to that is how long can he go blow for blow with him? Because if you go back and forth 5-6 times and it's 42-42, that's great. But if Michael Penix lands the knockout shot, it's not going to matter in the end. And so I do think he can keep up with him, but whether or not he would keep up with him enough, and if that Michigan defense can force a Michael Penix turnover, that's where Michigan could ultimately win this championship game. But, you know, I'm going with the Huskies. I picked the Huskies to win it all last week, just not really because of any logic or reasoning other than just my own fan bias. but I'm sticking with my pick. I'm sticking with the Huskies. Let's go UW. And real quickly, Jaevon, before we move on here on episode number 71 of Stats Over Politics, I just wanted to read off an Instagram comment since, we are live on Instagram.
We are live on Instagram, by the way, so
it's a thing. It's happening. Tap in. We appreciate everyone who's been tapped in with us as well. As Sincerely Sway says on Instagram, came to check on Kevin. He all right, man? It's rough in Philly. And, Kevin is doing all right. It has been rough in Philly, but he's taking care of his puppy tonight. And so family comes first, and the puppy's definitely a part of the family. And so gotta prioritize the family, even though it has been tough for him and the Eagles as of late. After that 10-1 start, they have lost 4 out of their last 5 games. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. But Sway also says, I think you're shortchanging Michigan's defense. Michigan's defense, I do think that they'll have something to say about Michael Penix next week. But Jaevon and I are both picking the Huskies. Now moving on, Jaevon, here on episode number 70.
4:30 in a semifinal game. That's all I'm going to say, man. Like that's really good. When your quarterback plays
pretty damn good.
When your quarterback plays that well, I'm inclined to think that he's going to be able to touch up Michigan's defense. So we'll see.
We shall see.
Really good though. Very, very, very good.
They certainly are, and they definitely showed that in the first half of today's game and late in the game when it truly mattered. So we shall see, and we'll be back here on Stats Over Politics next week, January 8th, immediately following the championship game to recap it all. So make sure to tap in with us for that. So now, Jaevon, moving on here on episode number 71 of Stats Over Politics, Sean Holko alongside Jaevon Toddy, Kevin Dent, and Garry Singh will be rejoining us again soon. Let's move on to the professionals and the next level being the NFL. I think this might be the first or second time since the NFL season started that we have not led with the NFL here on Stats Over Politics, but college football playoff, pretty important. That was the focus of today being the first day of 2024. So had to cover that in depth. Now moving on to the NFL. Let's recap week 17 in the NFL, Jaevon. And you got 2 49ers fans sitting right here. So no better way to start than
49ers.
Number 1 seed in the NFC as the 49ers beat the Commanders 27-10 in the nation's capital on Sunday morning. And not only that, Jaevon, but after the game, the 49ers went back to the locker room. They all huddled around a small TV or their own phones to watch the end of the Eagles game because the Cardinals beat the Eagles 35-31, which was ultimately what led to the 49ers clinching a week early. I was saying, as well as James in our Stats Over Politics Fantasy Football League group chat, I was saying Merry Clinchmas because I thought that next week's game against the Rams was going to be for the number 1 seed, but the Cardinals, they helped us out. And so we'll get to the Cardinals defeating the Eagles next. But Jaevon, let's start with the 49ers beating the Commanders 27-10. What were your thoughts on this one?
I don't think anyone really doubted that the Niners would lose this game or that the Niners wouldn't win. It was just a matter of would they be able to cover the spread or not, and they did. They were 2 touchdown favorites. Purdy played an awesome game. He leads. He's the all-time leading passer in 49ers in single season 49er history. He leads. He's the last pick in the draft. He is the number 1 passer for a single season. That's with a guy that I don't know, Jeff Garcia. Jeff Garcia was the former holder of that record, but there's guys like Joe Montana and Steve Young. I don't know if you guys ever heard of those guys. Won a couple of Super Bowls, but that's neither here nor there. Brandon Ayuk, 1,300-yard receiver. You got guys like George Kittle and Deebo Samuel.
Not 1,000. 1,300.
Okay. You got guys like the best tight end in the league. George Kittle has 1,000 scrimmage yards, and you have Deebo Samuel who has 1,000 scrimmage yards. You got Christian McCaffrey, who was a little bit banged up in this game, has 1,400 rushing yards. So we got to see Elijah Mitchell. But Purdy, the game manager, he had 230 yards, 2 touchdowns.
I would say that Brock Purdy, he's pretty relevant now as the top passer in 49ers history.
I think he's pretty relevant. Wasn't really a surprise for this game. It was kind of, let's bounce back from last week. I said this on Twitter or X, or wherever we want to call it, group chat. I said the Niners, despite this loss, which was on Christmas on Monday Night Football, the Niners still run the NFC. And I still came on this podcast. I got a couple of side eyes here and there from some Cowboys fans, a couple of Eagles fans. Yes, Kaz, I'm looking at you. I'm talking to you. They were saying, like, are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? I'm very much sure. And I said that even after we just lost to the Ravens. So Niners still run the NFC. He even said to Kevin a few podcasts ago, Kev's like, "Oh, we'll see y'all again." I was like, "Okay."
Mm-hmm.
But if we see y'all again, you're gonna come to Levi's this time. It's not gonna be in the link. You guys are gonna have to be on the road. But I don't even think the Eagles will have a road playoff or a home playoff game this postseason, given on how they've been free falling the past couple of weeks.
And they're free falling. Sorry, I had to get a little comedy there. Terrible voice, but I had to do it.
You had guys like Diamador Lenore get an interception. Mooney Ward got an interception. Holding the Commanders to 10 points. Not really saying much, but you had to come out and dominate, I think, just after the loss on Monday Night Football. You had to kind of come out and make a statement like, hey, we're still the best team in the NFC. Everything kind of runs through the Bay, as Mooney Ward said in his post-game interview. And, seeing everybody at the end of the game, I think we saw, who was it, Mike Silver or Adam, whoever it was. He was
Mike Silver.
I think it was Mike Silver. He had his phone out, and Devo, Ayuk, and Kittle, they were all kind of huddled around the phone to, like, watch Kyler. I think they were showing when Kyler scored the go-ahead touchdown pretty much. And then in the locker room, you saw everybody kind of watching the Hail Mary get intercepted by, I don't know who it was, but one of the Cardinal players. And it was a full circle moment because, you had something happen, which, again, we'll probably get into a little bit later. You had the debacle on Saturday night in the Cowboys-Lions game, and then, those events happen. And then you got the Eagles who, they kind of control their own destiny. Just gotta beat the 3-12 Cardinals. That's all you got to do. Just beat them. They're 3-12. You can beat them, right? Like,
yeah.
Cardinals.
It's something the Cowboys couldn't do, right? But the Eagles, they could easily do it.
The Eagles could do it. So it was handed to them on a silver platter, and, they folded at home. So that's probably the most satisfying part of Sunday.
Most definitely. And I was locked into this 49ers and Commanders game and didn't have Red Zone on. And I actually have the highlights of this Eagles-Cardinals game on the NFL Network going on in front of me right now. And not the go-ahead touchdown, but the touchdown that tied the game at 28 with 5 minutes to go. I didn't even realize it was on 4th and 4 for the Cardinals. And so, so perfect there. And
the guy who's the head coach, the Eagles, they got, they're trying to get him up out of there. So maybe they should have stayed.
Philly turned on Nicky real quickly. They sure did. And so, Jaevon, the NFC officially now runs through Santa Clara. And could you remind me, when was the last time that the NFC ran through Santa Clara? It was in 2019, right? Going into 2020 with the playoffs. Yeah, back in 2019.
What's the Super Bowl?
Yeah. So, oh, really? Oh, so they did. Oh, really? So, for the audio only listeners, I am wearing my NFC Champions shirt from the 2019 season. Yep. I will have to get a new one because the NFC runs through Santa Clara. The last time it ran through Santa Clara, they went to the Super Bowl. I'm here to tell you all right now, January 1st, 10:50 p.m. here Pacific Standard Time, the 49ers are going back to the Super Bowl. I'm not telling you that they're going. Yeah, there you go. There you go. I'll pull out the notebook and I'll get it for myself. The 49ers are going back to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to sit here right now and confidently say that they will win the Super Bowl because we all saw what happened on Christmas. The Ravens scare me, okay? I'm going to be honest. They scare me. Jaevon, you and I as 49ers fans, born in 1998, it has been nothing but pain for us because those 5 Super Bowls preceded us. We've seen our team losing the Super Bowl twice, to the Ravens and then to the Chiefs. The Ravens and the Chiefs both they both scare me. The Ravens and the Chiefs don't scare me if they were.
Chiefs don't scare me as much. I'm not really
even with how the Chiefs have fallen off a little bit. I'm still concerned because they have Patrick Mahomes. It's just like he truly, like Garry says, like, oh, he's the Michael Jordan of the NFL. He truly is. And so it's like until that guy is eliminated from the postseason, I'm going to fear him. And so those are the two main teams that I'm concerned about. But the 49ers, they are going to coast through these NFC playoffs. You think back to 2019, yeah, they were in a little bit of a game with the Vikings, but then they pulled away. They absolutely stomped on the Packers. They dog walked them and got back to the Super Bowl. And I'm telling you all right now, that's about to happen again. The 49ers are going back to the Super Bowl. I don't know what's going to happen once they get there, but the NFC runs through Santa Clara, and the 49ers are going to win another NFC championship. And I will even go as far to say this. And Jaevon, let me hear your thoughts on this one, because I was debating back and forth in one of my group chats about this with some Cowboys, Seahawks, Eagles fans. They were saying that if Christian McCaffrey were to miss a playoff game, that the 49ers would be cooked. They were saying that the 49ers would be done.
We can get a playoff game without him.
That's exactly what I was saying, is that yes, Christian McCaffrey is the NFL's MVP, or at least the runner-up, because it's probably going to go to Lamar Jackson, but he has been the MVP in my opinion for most of this season. So if you're missing that player, it would be pretty important. But the difference between the 49ers and a team like the Cowboys, where the Cowboys have CeeDee Lamb, yeah, they have Tony Pollard, what he once was, but if CeeDee Lamb were to get hurt, Cowboys are done.
They're cooked.
If Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, I would hate to see Christian McCaffrey get hurt, but the 49ers still have 1,300-yard Brandon Ayuk. They still have the wide back, Deebo Samuel. They still have a top 3 tight end in George Kittle. They still have Elijah Mitchell, who isn't a scrub at running back. And, the top passer in 49ers history, suddenly relevant, Brock Purdy. And, even Sway said on Instagram, he said, even Brock Purdy looked good before he played Baltimore. And I think Brock took it on the chin. We saw him take it on the chin. And, I wouldn't be upset if Christmas ended up being the worst game of Brock Purdy's 2023 season, because he'll come back and he'll get revenge on Baltimore, I think. But what I can definitively say, what I will write in the notebook right now, is the 49ers are going back to the Super Bowl now that the NFC runs through Santa Clara, and I can say that definitively.
Let's not act like we had a certain somebody on this podcast that said the first week of the playoffs doesn't matter. We'll be watching with our feet up. We'll be waiting for whoever wins on that Saturday and Sunday. We'll be watching to see who we will be playing, and they will be traveling to us. The turntables have turned. And I believe, the phrases that we use on this podcast is life comes at you fast.
Oh, real fast.
and it comes at you, and it hits you right in the gut. So kind of just to really reiterate, let's not act like Purdy hasn't been in playoff games, who's won playoff games. Let's act like he doesn't have multiple playoff wins, because he does. But I think if that were to happen, I don't think it's going to happen, because I think McCaffrey's going to be he's going to be good to go.
He's going to have 2 weeks to rest now, week 18 and the bye week.
Yeah, so he's going to have a lot of time to recover. You usually don't get 2 weeks off during an NFL season, but that's the beauty of the first round bye that the Niners worked for the entire season. They're going to be enjoying the fruits of their labor that way. So it was just good to see. I believe we were going to clinch it even going into next week, because we had the Rams. We kind of have the Rams' number, but
we own them.
It was great to see that the Cardinals were able to help us out. We should send them a bottle of champagne for the troubles.
Yeah, we appreciate the Cardinals. And so speaking of the Cardinals, now moving on, as we mentioned earlier, the Cardinals beat the Eagles 35-31. And also Uncle Manny, he said this earlier, and so I wanted to wait to highlight these comments until we did get to these games. But he said, LOL. Hey, Eagles fans, remember when we sucked? We being the Cowboys. Hey, Eagles fans, remember when the Cowboys sucked because they lost to the Cardinals? Hashtag, how about them Cowboys? Well, Manny, I would say, yeah, the Cowboys still suck because they should have never lost to the Pastronaut. Nevertheless, if this Eagles loss makes you feel better, because the Cowboys did lose in Arizona, The Eagles lost on their home field to the Cardinals. It was against Kyler Murray, who is a significantly better quarterback than Josh Dobbs. Nevertheless, 49ers played the Cardinals twice this year. They played the Pastronaut, and Kyler Murray beat them both. Something Cowboys and Eagles both couldn't do. So, Jaevon, as we mentioned, the 49ers ultimately clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC because of this Eagles loss. And so how did Arizona pull off the upset?
Well, I don't think this would have been possible if they didn't have Kyler Murray. I thought he was a game changer for them. Being able to make plays with his legs and extend plays. We saw there was a couple of touchdowns that he had to extend to like the final, last, possible route that was being run in whatever scramble drill they were having, to be able to create plays for himself. And, Jalen Hurts is progressing, dare I say.
He has a lot of learning to do. That's the word he keeps using in his press conferences, saying we're learning.
Pass yards. Did they pay Jalen Hurts off of one good year? I get it. Guys made it to the Super Bowl, lose a bunch of coordinators, and, you guys look a lot very regular, I would say. A.J. Brown, only 4 receptions for 53 yards. I feel like you got to get him a little bit more involved. DeAndre Swift had a solid run day, 13 for 61 yards, but Hurts had three touchdowns, but it just wasn't enough. They had the turnover. He had the interception. The numbers are pretty even. I think it kind of just came down to, Kyler being able to make plays. They had about 449 yards in total offense for them. So they were able to kind of create and generate a little bit more offense. The Eagles are kind of just reeling. They're losing games at home. They're losing games that they should win, losing to, Seattle on the road, Monday Night Football. You're just kind of, it kind of just goes back to what Debo said in the offseason. Bradbury's trash. I think Slay was hurt. I don't know if he played this game. I don't think he did. So he's kind of been missing in this game. But, you picked up Kevin Byard, and people were saying that secondary is going to be, Kevin's called me while I'm driving. He's like, I had to pull over for this one. We just got Kevin Byard up. It's just like, okay, that should be, solid. But maybe Tennessee got rid of him for a reason.
And just to follow up on Darius Slay, he has been out since before the Seahawks game, as he underwent an arthroscopic procedure on his
knee. But their secondary still wasn't what it once was. Even when Slay was in the lineup, you could argue that maybe he was still playing hurt. But the Eagles had a pick 6 in this game, so secondary has kind of been getting torched regularly over these past 5 games, and I feel like that's going to be their downfall. Now you're going to look to the head coach. What does the head coach do? We don't know. Both of their coordinators, Gannon, who is now the head coach for Arizona, and Steichen, who is the head coach for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yep.
They were both of the play callers, offense and defense, for the Super Bowl team last year. And now they're gone. People are going to put a lot of blame on, I think Brian Johnson is the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. I'm seeing a lot of blame being pointed towards his way, but kind of comes back to the head coach like, hey, man, life comes at you fast. Last year they were NFC champions, went to the Super Bowl. A lot of people were saying they were a play away from being able to win the Super Bowl. People said that Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl, which is probably true, but did end up coming short. You kind of come back to this year, and they start the season off hot. Obviously the number 1 seed for the majority part of the season, and then kind of go on a skid towards what's really, like, I'd say more of the cushion part of their schedule. The gauntlet, as we usually referred it to when they, played the Chiefs, played the Bills, played the Niners. They only lost one game. Yeah, they only lost one game out of that. And, you're playing against, I guess this is their gauntlet. They're losing to Seattle. They're losing they're losing to the Cardinals. They're dropping these weird games. And it's like, well, what's really going on? So the Eagles are trending down in a bad time right going into the playoffs, losing, as Shaun already mentioned, I think it was 4 of their last 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good, especially when you're trying to get ready for playoffs. You're trying to at least host a playoff game to try
Not anymore.
Try and win the division. But now it's not up to you guys anymore. You guys had your chance, and now you guys need the Cowboys to lose to the Commanders, aka the football team, next week. So
good luck with that.
You're gonna be wishing that you guys would have played a little bit better throughout these last couple of games. But Sam Howell you guys trust, I guess. So Cowboys were touched by an angel, and they're probably going to be able to host a playoff game. And I said this on last week's podcast. If the Eagles and Cowboys play again in the playoffs, which is probably going to happen, I'm not sure how the seeding works out, and they have to play in Dallas, Dallas is probably going to win that game, and they probably will be favored, given what's been happening these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, just doing the quick math in my head, because the Eagles would be locked into the 5 seed, Dallas would be the 2 seed. It would have to be in the divisional round if that were to happen.
It would have to happen in the second round, because right now the Cowboys are the 2nd seed, Eagles are the 5 seed. So they'd probably play the Bucks on the road. Now the Eagles did beat the Bucks early. If the playoffs would start today, it would be what would it be? It would be Cowboys.
Wouldn't
Packers.
it be Detroit and LA too, with Stafford having going back to Detroit?
Yeah, so it'd be Cowboys, Packers. It would be Rams at Lions, and it would be Eagles at Bucks. But I think the Saints have the tiebreaker over the Bucks. They just beat them.
Yes, they did, but I think the Bucks beat the Saints earlier in the season because because the commentators were saying even after the Saints got that win in Tampa that the Bucks could have clinched the division this week. They didn't, but they still just need to win next week to be able to clinch the division. And so
play the Panthers.
Yes.
So
they better do it. They better do it.
Maybe I'm not wrong, guys. And the Saints get in the playoffs and make the NFC Championship game.
Oh Lord, that would be remarkable. That would be absolutely remarkable.
I'm still trying. But I think there's like 6 teams competing for 2 spots in the NFC. So a lot has to happen.
Yeah, and in the AFC, it's pretty wild as well. But the one thing that is certain in the AFC is that the Baltimore Ravens will be the number 1 seed, as the Ravens are arguably the best team in the NFL right now. It's hard to argue against that when they went head-to-head on the road, against the NFC's number 1 seed, and as Jaevon said, curb stomped them. And Jaevon, it's unfortunate that the 49ers lost 33-19 against the Ravens, but at least they didn't lose 56-19 against the Ravens, which is what happened to the Dolphins on Sunday. And so rather than focusing on the result of this game, I wanted to kind of dissect these 2 teams, because the Dolphins, they're still up there in the AFC standings. I think they're going to be playing for the number 2 seed. Yeah, and they don't scare anyone, because as we talked about last week with the Cowboys and Dolphins game, that was a matchup of 2 teams who have gotten a majority of their wins against losing teams. And then when they play teams of their caliber, they ultimately lose. Dolphins didn't just lose in this game. They got absolutely obliterated. And so when it comes to this result, was it more so about the Ravens just being far and away the best team in the AFC? Or was it just that the Dolphins are kind of frauds?
I think the Dolphins are frauds. I don't think they're that good. So I'm looking at the standings right now. Dolphins play the Bills on Sunday Night Football. I think it's kind of cool how the NFL kind of just vacates all of the spots, the time slots for the last week, because they're, a bunch of teams are fighting for playoff positions, so they want to put those teams on TV. Bills are hot right now. They're on a 4-game win streak. The Dolphins just lost Bradley Chubb for the rest of the year off of a torn ACL, which was kind of crazy, as they were already getting kind of dog walked throughout the game, and to lose him makes the loss even worse. The Chiefs are somehow going to limp to the 2 seed. I don't know how, man. I have no idea how.
Well, hold on, but I thought that if the Dolphins win on Sunday, then they get the 2 seed, or even the Bills.
They're not winning on Sunday.
Oh, well,
they're not winning on Sunday. Let's put that out there. Wait, did the Bills beat the Chiefs? The
Bills beat the Chiefs. The Bills beat the Chiefs in KC.
So the Bills can get the number 2 seed.
I
So if the
think this
Bills
game.
win, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this game we were on the same track there. Where I think this game is not only for the AFC title, but AFC East title, I should say. It's also for the number 2 seed in the AFC.
So basically the Chiefs are locked into the 3 seed.
That's what it looks like from my own analysis.
Because the Bills beat the Chiefs, but the Dolphins, if the Dolphins win, they'd have a better record than the Chiefs.
Dolphins, Dolphins point blank period just need to win. If they win, they get the AFC East and they get the number 2 seed. If the Bills win, they get the AFC East, but I think it's a little murky whether if they would be the 2 or 3. I think they would be 2 because they did beat Kansas City, but sometimes the tiebreakers come down to overall conference record versus conference opponents, and so it'll be interesting. We'll see how it shakes out, but you think that the Dolphins are frauds?
Yeah, I don't think we see them go against these teams like we saw them go against the Chiefs. Albeit the game was in London, they lost. When they play the Bills, they get freaking slapped. When they play the Ravens, they get slapped. Like, come on, dudes. What are we doing here?
Come on, dudes.
Like, going into the playoffs last year, they kind of made it a game against the Bills, and they had who was the quarterback for them? I forget. He was drafted over Purdy like a couple of slots before Purdy, but he was their backup last year.
The Bills?
Yeah. The Dolphins when they played the Bills in the playoffs.
Oh, the Dolphins.
Who was the Dolphins backup? I forgot what his name was.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank.
But
I'll try to find it.
A lot of people were saying if Tua would have played in that game, they probably would have won. But I think kind of in the AFC, you have the Ravens, who are probably obviously the number one.
Sorry, I didn't mean to oddly found the name.
What's the name?
Skylar Thompson.
There you go, Skylar Thompson. So I think he threw like 3 picks in that game, so he did not help them at all when it comes to
Kansas State.
But a scary team that a lot of people I think would be afraid of playing is the Browns. Browns are
the Joe Flacco-led
Browns
in 2024. This is crazy.
This is 10 years later, and Flacco is trying to go on a magical run. Did you see how amped up they were on Thursday night after the game and how like the lights were flashing? I'm like, this is the Cleveland Browns stadium. I've never seen it like this. People were just, running all over the place, and Flacco's throwing for 300, falling asleep on the sidelines and shit. This is what Browns fans wanted Deshaun Watson to do. And obviously he is hurt and out for the season. And I believe just when we watched him play, he didn't look that good. Now it could have been the injury that was hindering him. That could be it, but
also losing Nick Chubb.
Yeah, you lose Nick Chubb literally the first game, and he was running. I think it was Monday night.
Second game.
Might have been the second game. But Nick Chubb was
early
running all over everybody. Kevin Stefanski's probably the coach of the year. He was in that running with. I had D'Amico, I had Shane Steichen, I had Kevin Stefanski, Kyle Shanahan. Those guys were where I was leaning towards coach of the year for. But,
Harbaugh?
You could put Harbaugh in there too. Another guy who's constantly just been winning and winning. You could put Tomlin in there too, but
it gets tough. I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say I feel like it gets tough for the voters to choose these tenured coaches because it's like it's kind of just like the LeBron effect where it's like LeBron James is so fucking great
every year,
yeah, exactly. So it kind of goes out. I mean, otherwise, like Bill Belichick could have won Coach of the Year like 5 years in a row.
So I'm looking at it from a standpoint as the Browns are kind of locked into the 5. It looks like they would play the Jags, the Colts, or the Texans.
Whoever comes out of the AFC South.
And I think they could probably be able to get a playoff win. Getting a playoff win with a backup quarterback that you had to sign off of the street, who's 38, 39 years old, is insane. And, I mean, the Niners had to deal with the Browns, and they gave them fits the entire game. Yeah. And it was the defense that kind of was. We didn't play Joe Flacco. We played freaking PJ Washington.
Wasn't it Dorian? Or I thought it was Dorian Thompson Robinson. Was it PJ Walker?
I think it was PJ Walker. I think DTR
One of
played a
those
little bit.
dudes.
Yeah,
One
I
of
think it was
those
PJ
dudes.
Walker. I'm pretty sure it was PJ Walker.
Okay. Yeah.
But Flacco is adding a different element to this team to where he's putting up numbers. 300 plus pat, 2 touchdown plus games.
Fantasy
Every game,
superstar.
yeah. If you would have bet on Flacco's over for yards in every game that he's played, you would have hit every single time. And yeah, the Browns are not a team that most people would want to play. I think another team a lot of people wouldn't want to play is the Bills too, because the Bills are hot. But they can get streaky at times. I feel like they turn the ball over a little bit more for people's taste, and turnovers matter a lot in the playoffs because possessions matter. Game slows down a little bit in the playoffs, so the Browns are going to be another team that they'll win a playoff game, and they'll play. Shoot, who would they end up playing? Like if they play Kansas City, that'd be tough. Chiefs still might be favored in that game, but it'd be a tough go. Who would have thought Joe Flacco versus Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game would be must-see TV?
Who would have thought? And speaking of must-see TV, I'm going to go off on a real quick tangent here, just about my WWE fandom, because in the WWE, there's a superstar called Mike the Miz Mizanin. He's from Cleveland, and part of his gimmick is he has a show called Miz TV, and he always says it's must-see TV. The reason why I bring him up is Monday Night Raw was in Cleveland like a month ago, and David Njoku, the tight end for the Browns, he came to the show and he did like a behind the scenes thing. Oh, no, not quite. But he did like a behind the scenes thing with the Miz, and they did an interview in the ring, and it was for a feature on the NFL's YouTube page. But anyways, the whole reason why I'm even bringing this up is Miz was asking him originally. He was like, what did you think when you guys signed Joe Flacco? Because this is a guy who just tore us up for years as a division foe in Baltimore. And David Njoku, who has been on the Browns for like 7 years now, he said himself, yeah, right. And so the thing that David said is he said, when we first signed Flacco, I was looking at him sideways because I was thinking that he was a spy for the Ravens. And so it's just funny to see how their relationship has evolved, and how Joe Flacco is great at the age that he's at, and that he's doing it now in going into 2024. I think it's safe to say that he will hopefully continue to play at this level now in a brand new year. But the Browns get that 37-20 win against the Jets on Thursday Night Football. And the last thing I will say about this game is that the Jets might have been regretting not signing Joe Flacco back, because the most recent team he was on was the Jets. And they, even after the Aaron Rodgers injury, he said that his agent reached out to the Jets and they didn't really want him, even though all the teammates loved him. And now you're getting torn up by him in week 17. Your season is done because you didn't want to sign Flacco. Meanwhile, the Browns have been resurrected by Joe Flacco. And so now moving on here on episode 71 of Stats Over Politics, Sean Holko alongside Jaevon Toddy. Toddy, we have you gave us the perfect segue going from the Ravens to the Browns. And so we've already gotten into our speedy rundown of the remaining games from week 17 in the NFL. Now let's get to the next one, as the Cowboys beat the Lions 20-19.
This was the CeeDee Lamb game. I think he set is it all-time receptions or yards for?
Probably.
I think it was yards.
Like probably yards, because
yards in a season for Dallas Cowboy ever. So you can quote me on that, Uncle Manny. Cowboys fans guys can quote me on that. But Cowboys were touched by an angel. Lions had a chance to win. Lions won the game pretty much. They had the whole 2-point controversy. Guy goes in and checks in with the ref. The refs wait until after the play's over to throw the illegal formation flag, which was insane. And I think the NFL even came out and said that that crew was going to be removed from the playoffs. So I guess that's their way of saying that the officials got it wrong in the end. But you got to give credit to Dak Prescott. He played pretty well in this game. CeeDee Lamb was a monster forever. Had CeeDee Lamb or was facing CeeDee Lamb in fantasy finals. He probably was the guy that kind of broke your back. But nevertheless, Cowboys, I kind of mentioned that they're kind of a different team at home. They usually win. They're undefeated at home, from what I'm understanding. But they did not cover the spread because they let Dan Campbell drive all the way. Jared Goff drive all the way down the field after they scored the crazy touchdown. I think it was by CeeDee Lamb, if I'm not mistaken. That scored that late touchdown for them. But Goff played his ass off. Gave his team a chance to win at the end. There were 271. He had 2 picks. But he still had a chance to. They still had a chance to win the game at the end. But I think the difference in this game was definitely CeeDee Lamb. He had 227 yards, 13 receptions, and a touchdown. So those numbers can't get any better. Dak Prescott, 345. You would like to see the defense get a little bit more timely stops, but it just kind of goes back to Cowboys are pretty solid at home. They were kind of touched by an angel at the end of the game with Jerry, or I don't know if it was Jerry or if it was Vegas that made the call and said, hey, throw that flag at the end. So Cowboys win, and now they're the 2 seed. So maybe Jerry Jones will send a bottle of champagne to old Kyler and the boys in Arizona. So Cowboys might win the NFC East.
Yeah, they are now in control. And another team that is now in control of their own fate, as we talked about earlier, is the Buffalo Bills, who defeated the Patriots 27-21 on Sunday. The only thing I'll say about this game is that the Bills, they have pulled themselves out of it, because weeks ago we were talking about how they were like 6-7, but they easily could have been like 9-2 or whatever, 10-3, and they have pulled themselves out of it. I will say that is good, because the point is just to get a W, to state the obvious. But the point that I wanted to make is I don't know how encouraged I would be if I were circling the wagons as a Buffalo Bills fan, because you sneak by the Chargers, you sneak by the Patriots. I don't know how encouraged I would be by that. And I think the same Patriots team beat the Bills earlier this season. And so I'm genuinely, as a 49ers fan, I'm genuinely concerned about the Ravens. I will be concerned about the Chiefs just because they have Jordan. But the Bills, I'm not really concerned about. The Browns, I don't know if I'm really – I don't know if I'm concerned about a lot of teams in the AFC besides those two. And if the Bills were winning more convincingly, maybe I would be a little fearful of them. But right now I'm not. I mean, Josh Allen with one interception or half – if there's a prop bet and you see Josh Allen, half an interception, more or less, hammer the over. That is like, I'm not the betting guy. I'm going to leave that to my guy, Jaevon. But I know well enough at this point. That is probably one of the biggest locks of all locks, is a Josh Allen interception. And so, the Bills, to me, they needed to prove a little bit more. They have the opportunity now coming up this Sunday in Miami to do that and to win convincingly in a game that truly matters. And so we'll see if they're able to do that. So Jaevon, the next game, this was a good one for us. I don't know about Kevin, but the Bears beat the Falcons 37-17.
Hopped on the bandwagon at the right time, baby. Fields putting up points, man. They put up 37 points. A lot of people are starting to say, hey, I know we got the number 1 pick, but we got a quarterback over here, man. Let's just get him a receiver or 2, build around the defense, and we're good to go. I don't know if that's the case. For me, I would draft Caleb Williams in a heartbeat.
You sure would.
But, Fields has been playing his ass off, for 268, had a touchdown, rushed for 45 yards. I think he had a rushing touchdown as well. I feel like that's where he's a threat. DJ Moore went insane, had 9 for 159, a touchdown. So if you had him in fantasy, it was probably a good day for you. I think it goes back to just the Falcons not being really good. Heineke, Ritter, tomato. They combined for a total of 4 interceptions. So if you're going to be able to turn the ball over the road 4 times and still hope to win, you are probably drinking or smoking something. And it's not going to be, I don't think it'd work out for you that well. But people are still wondering why Bijan Robinson isn't getting as involved as he should be. Their leading receiver was Tyler Algier. He had 1 reception for 75 yards and a touchdown. So when your leading receiver is a running back, that leads to show me that this offense isn't capable, or maybe the quarterback just isn't capable. So
Check down Charlie.
Is the head coach in Atlanta going to get fired? I've been seeing been hearing and seeing that he should be fired, but is Arthur Smith? Arthur Smith is the head coach, right? I think that's
correct.
So I think I believe their offense is more than capable. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Van Jefferson. You got Kyle Pitts. I just don't think you have a distributor of the football that's that good. So if I'm them, I would be giving Chicago a call in the offseason, like, hey, I know you guys got the number 1 pick, but I mean, do you want to trade us Justin Fields and give us a 4th, maybe a 3rd? Justin Fields, the fan club, man. Join while you can. Either if he's going to be in Chicago or if he's going to go somewhere else. He's going to shine.
To Atlanta, potentially.
Maybe to Atlanta, maybe to Steelers. Pittsburgh.
Ooh, I like that.
Pittsburgh might be calling his name a little bit there too, but we're kind of starting to see him thrive a little bit. This goes back to me saying, this is my theory just about quarterbacks. You just got to let them bake in the oven, man. I get some guys are just good right away. People want you to be Mahomes. They want you to be Herbert. You know, they want you to even be Lamar and start winning MVPs right away or start winning playoff games. But sometimes you just got to develop. And, you know, guys like Justin Fields, the first couple of years, they're just thrown into the fire and they expect you to be good. But, you know, you don't have the requisite pieces around you, i.e. offensive line, the right receivers, guys really can't get separation, and they still want you to be winning playoff games. And that's not always the case. And the organization isn't always good. You're going through coaching changes, you know, front office changes. That's a lot to kind of unpack too. So you just got to be in the right situation. I feel like the Bears are slowly kind of trying to build that around Justin Fields, but could be too little too late. You could get that number 1 pick, maybe trade for a haul and get a bunch of picks back and just build around Justin Fields, or draft Caleb Williams. So we'll see where that goes. But it was a good game for Justin Fields.
It certainly was. And I appreciate you being the vice president of the fan club alongside me. Yeah. And you know who isn't? Kevin. Love you, Kevin. All right. So the Colts beat the Raiders 23-20. All I'll say about this game is that, like, Raider fans, no need to panic. You should still hire Antonio Pierce as your head coach. Like, he has proven he is the guy. Go get a quarterback. Exactly. And we were talking earlier just about how there's like 5-6 guys who will likely get drafted pretty high in the NFL draft as far as quarterbacks go this year. And Michael Penix might go to Seattle. Maybe he might go to Las Vegas. All those fan bases likely want him.
Raiders need to be snooping around for a quarterback this year. They tried to Jimmy Garoppolo. They gave him $60 million, which was insane to me. But this is a good draft class. Whoever's available in free agency, or if Justin Fields maybe might be available, you try to go get him. Or you draft a guy. I think the draft pick should be top 10, maybe. So maybe they might have to move up to get a guy, but I think the Raiders should be in the market for a quarterback. That was
and they shouldn't let this game discourage them, because they lost on the road against a team that's still competing for a division title by 3 points. And so Raider fans shouldn't be discouraged. And for the Colts, like they're staying alive. They did what they had to do. Minshew Mania and Jonathan Taylor combined to get the job done. And now we shall see how it all turns out, because there's the head-to-head matchup. I think it's Texans and Colts, and then you got Titans and Jaguars. And so
Jag got to win.
Exactly. Jags got to win. Otherwise, the winner of the Colts and Texans will clinch the division. But we shall see. A lot of this is we shall see, and we will continue to talk about it here on Stats Over Politics. Jaevon, next game we got is the Rams beating the Giants 26-25 to clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah, Rams almost gave this one away. The Giants had a punt return late in the game to kind of almost put them up, but Dayball tries to go for 2 to go up 1, but it gets botched at the end. The Rams kind of did not really much to say about this game. I think Kyron Williams is a stud. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp will be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. I feel like they'll have an advantage there for their offense. I think it's going to come down to the Rams' defense in the playoffs and figure out if they're going to be able to generate stops because Matt Stafford and the offense will be able to put up points with the great offensive mind that Sean McVay is. He'll be able to kind of make things happen too. So I think for this game in total, it's going to come down to, or just for this game in total, Rams got to be able to get stops, and they should be able to beat teams like New York pretty easily.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda. They definitely should have. And as a 49ers fan, I typically hate on the Rams. And so I kind of wish that the Rams gave this game away, but they didn't officially give it away. It is what it is as the Rams are headed back to the playoffs, but I'm not concerned about them at all. And even just the fact that the Rams are sneaking into the playoffs and they already clinched last week. And so now this game coming up in week 18 in Santa Clara between the 49ers and the Rams, it went from having so many playoff implications to ultimately none because the 49ers locked up the number 1 seed. The Rams seem like they're going to be locked into that 5 seed with the wild card. And so it'll be interesting to see how this game on Sunday ultimately plays out, just because it hardly means anything now. And a game that will matter this upcoming weekend is the games played by the NFC South, because just like the AFC South, the NFC South is just up in the air at this point after the Saints beat the Buccaneers 23-13, as we mentioned earlier. Buccaneers had a chance to clinch. They failed to do so. And so now goes into week 17. And as we said earlier, maybe Toddy ends up hitting a shot in the dark and the Saints do make the playoffs. And maybe the Saints even the NFC is so wide open. Like the 49ers have basically, in my assessment, the 49ers have already clinched their spot in the NFC Championship game. We'll see who they play. But who knows? Maybe because the NFC is so wide open that the Saints could sneak their way to the playoffs and then sneak their way to a NFC Championship game loss. Again, we shall see. Jaevon, the Jaguars beat the Panthers 26-0.
CJ Beathard, man, gotta give him some credit. There was a must-win game for them because it kind of would have came down to, I think they would have needed help kind of going into this final week, but pretty much it sets them up for success for this week. They win, they get in, and pretty much everything else is deaded. They lose, a lot of things get tricky for them. So the Jaguars kind of still control their own destiny. You would have liked to see a little bit from Bryce Young after last week. He had a really good week last week against the Pack. I think he threw for like over 300 yards. So it was a win. It wasn't a win for them, but it was kind of a win for Bryce Young's confidence, kind of moving forward to be able to try and build off of that. But a frustrating loss, not being able to put up any points in this particular game. But the Panthers, they need a lot. they need a lot just going forward. They need to just try and accumulate draft picks and try to be able to sign guys in the offseason because they need all the help they can get. Build the offensive line first, protect Bryce Young, and get them some skill players. Get them some guys that can separate and throw the ball. There's a bunch of great receivers in this draft, as I already mentioned earlier. Rome Odunze, I don't know if A.D. Mitchell is going to be draft. I think he is draft eligible. But you got guys like Malik Neighbors. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. will be gone by then. Mm-hmm. Another guy who did play today was Brian Thomas Jr. He's the other receiver that's opposite to Malik Neighbors for LSU. He's another guy that can kind of go out and get the ball and be a big play specialist. So A lot of good receivers in this draft class, so Panthers got to be able to rebuild in the draft as well as the offseason.
Yeah, the thing that was kind of funny about this game in particular is just how the Bears are the ones who own the Panthers' number one overall pick, and the fact that the Bears got a 20-point win on Sunday, and even with that 20-point win, they clinched the number one overall pick because the Panthers lost and got shut out. And so I just thought that was hilarious. And as you said, the Panthers they got a lot of work to do, and they're off to a tough start already by not having the number one overall pick in this next draft. Yeah, I hope that they're satisfied with their pick of Bryce Young eventually, but you could have just had Caleb Williams instead. But sometimes you can't have nice things. Anyways, as I mentioned earlier, the AFC South, it's up for grabs. The Texans, they beat the Titans 26-3 to assure that they are still in that race. But the thing that should be noted about the AFC South versus the NFC South is it seems like with the NFC South, you're going to have the division champion. Maybe one of the other teams sneaks in as a wild card. But with the AFC South, it seems very likely that even if, no matter who wins the AFC South, it seems like the other two teams have a great shot of getting in as well. At least one of them, maybe they both get in as well, just depending on how the rest of the games go as the Steelers are in that race, so on and so forth. Speaking of the Steelers, Jaevon, they beat the Seahawks 30-23 in Seattle.
Picked the Steelers to win this game. Did not bet on this game. They were plus 170. Should have bet on it. It was free money. Mason Rudolph, man, he's just been providing, been putting up points. They put up 30 points this game. I never was the guy that said the Steelers don't have weapons. They just don't have a guy that can throw the ball to them. You got Pat Fryermuth, you got Najee Harris, you have Deontay Johnson, obviously you have George Pickens. I'm blanking on the other running back's name. That's Harris.
Oh, yeah, it's stuck in my head too.
But kind of just going to the game itself. Jalen Warren.
There we go. Okay. I kept thinking the only name that could pop up in my head was Anthony McFarland, Booger's son. But, there you go. Jalen Warren.
Geno Smith played okay. Kenneth Walker was kind of in and out. He was I think he was battling a little bit of an injury at the end. DK went off in this game, 105 for 106.
Standing on business.
He was definitely standing on business. But
I was going to sign it, but then our audio-only listeners wouldn't be able to see it.
I think it kind of just came down to, time management. The Steelers were able to hold the ball. They held the ball for 37 minutes. Seahawks only had the ball for 22 minutes. Pass yards were pretty similar. The Steelers rushed for 266, and the Seahawks only rushed for 88 yards. So I feel like that was kind of the difference in the game. Not too many penalties in this game. But the Steelers, man, Tomlin's going to have another winning season. They're 9-7. But they still might miss playoffs too because, their losses are kind of starting to pile up a little bit. Mason Rudolph, a guy who was cut, as Garry mentioned on last week's podcast, he was cut by the Steelers, but they ended up bringing him back this season. So for a guy who's kind of, went through trials and tribulations as a Steelers quarterback over the past couple of years, for him now to be able to, win a couple of games and win pretty convincingly, you're seeing that the Steelers team could maybe make the playoffs, but they need help. And the losses are catching up to them, and it's going to come down to the last week. They have to handle business and win week 18, but I think they might win because Ravens, they got the number one seed locked up, and they're probably just going to rest everybody. So Steelers probably win this game, end up splitting with the or not splitting. They would sweep.
Yeah, they would. You just read my mind.
Yeah, they beat the Ravens earlier this year, so need a little bit of help here and there, but yeah. Hats off to the Steelers going on the road and winning. Marcellus was at this game. He traveled with his lady friend, and they went to watch the Steelers win, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, because she's a Steelers fan, so that's pretty cool for her, and that they were able to enjoy that together. And something else that should be noted about this game is that the Steelers got their 9th win of the season, so that clinched another winning season for Mike Tomlin. This guy just doesn't lose. He does not. I can count on my hand at least within the last 5 years, like 3 seasons, at least 3 seasons where the Steelers look dead in the water. I think it was 2019 was the biggest one where they look dead in the water. They have a guy named Duck Hodges as their starting quarterback. The 49ers beat the brakes off of them in week 3 or whatever. I thought that the Steelers were going to lose throughout the rest of the season. They ultimately acquire Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I was like, why are you trading your first round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick when that first round pick's going to be a top 5 pick? And it wasn't, because Mike Tomlin just doesn't lose. This guy is.
You just brought me back. That was Shaun and Jaevon.
Nostalgia right there.
That's crazy.
You know, we're throwing it back to 2020 through 2022 tonight with today's episode of Stats Over Politics. I know, right? 4 years ago that we started Shaun and Jaevon, and here we are on Stats Over Politics as we have evolved. And I'm happy that you and I have added Kevin and Garry to have this podcast, and we appreciate everyone for tuning in as we got our last couple games here that we're going to get in depth when it comes, or not in depth, but our speedy rundown with the week 17
next game
recap. And for our audio only listeners, you heard Jaevon audibly sigh, and it's because this game was garbage as the Broncos beat the Chargers 16-9. Jarrett Stidham versus Easton Stick. What a matchup. And, I'm not even going to get into the outcome of this game. Okay, Broncos win 16-9. Congrats. What I will get into is it is so fucking foul what Sean Payton and that Broncos organization has been trying to do to Russell Wilson in regard to his contract and the injury guarantees that he has. And the fact that Russell Wilson opened up to the media this past week more in depth about what actually happened. And for Sean Payton to come to Russell Wilson during the bye week before they played the Kansas City Chiefs in Denver and to say, if you don't get or after, excuse me, either before or after, it was right in that time zone when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs for the first time in like 4 or 5 years. I think it was Patrick Mahomes' first ever loss on the road within the division. And for them to do that, and then his response be, oh, get rid of your injury guarantees, otherwise you're not going to be the starting QB anymore. That is absolute garbage. I could tell from the beginning of the season that Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, they were trying to make it work, and it just wasn't going to work because Sean Payton wanted to take over the team and make it his. But this is still ridiculous because Russell Wilson arguably is a future Hall of Famer. And for you to disrespect him this way, it really grinds my gears. But I'll leave it at that, and that's what I have to say about this.
Raiders, go get him.
Raiders should go get him. That's a great point. Get him on the cheap.
In division.
The Chiefs beat the Bengals 25-17.
Mahomes made some Mahomes-like plays. They were losing this game. I think it was like 17-7 at one point in time. Mahomes kind of came back. It was Jake Browning. Jake Browning was making some plays in this game, but Mahomes
bounce back game.
Mahomes definitely pulled some Mahomes magic in this game. Pulled some shit out of his ass. Ended up coming back and winning ultimately by 8 points, but didn't really see too much Travis Kelce as much as, we've seen him. He's kind of fell off a little bit in recent weeks, but Mahomes is still figuring out ways to get these victories up. Pacheco was kind of running roughshod all over the Bengals a little bit. Your boy, T. Higgins, played pretty good in this game. We're starting to see him show out at the end of
a little late there, T.
T. Higgins is a little late to the party, but he's showing out for you, getting you some points here and there. But no, I thought Browning didn't turn the ball over, so I thought they could have. Mixon had 21 attempts. Dang, he rushed for 65 yards, so Mixon could play a little bit better. Jamar was pretty good. Actually, Higgins had one catch for 19 yards, but that was last week. Mahomes threw for 245 and a touchdown. Pacheco was pretty much the story of this game. He had 130 rush yards, no touchdowns, but he was the difference in this game. And Rashee Rice had 5 for 127. I don't expect Rasheed Rice to have that stat line night in and night out, but it was helpful for them in this game. Mahomes kind of willed his team to the win. That was pretty much he was the difference in this game. So hats off to the Chiefs. They beat the Bengals, and I think they covered the spread. I think the spread was 6.5. So they ended up covering. The spread was 6.5. It was 7. So 6.5, 7 is what I was seeing. So they ended up covering. But Chiefs kind of are stuck at the 3 seed. Can't really change what happens on Sunday night for them to be able, unless I think the Bills and the Dolphins have to like tie or something like that. So, yeah, the Chiefs are kind of locked into the 3 seed, and that's kind of where they're going to be at. They'll host a playoff game. So, AFC Championship will not be in Arrowhead this year.
Woohoo! Finally, yeah, they'll get the one playoff game, but hopefully you just leave it at that. And then Mahomes finally has to play on the road in the playoffs for the first time in his career. I would love to see that. And finally, shout out to our guy Khalil, because the Packers beat the Vikings 33-10. I was texting back and forth with him. There's never a doubt. Jaron Hall didn't look good in this game, so much so that Nick Mullins replaced him. And the Packers, they take care of business. And both of these teams came into the game at 7-8. And the Packers, they ultimately proved that their 7-8 record isn't really indicative of how good this team actually is. The Packers have been quite inconsistent throughout this season, but they were certainly better than the Vikings, who were down to their, I guess, third string quarterback. I don't even know at this point where the Vikings. Their fourth quarterback to play this year. I don't know where they would slate him at, but anyways. Packers take care of business as they should, and now they still have a chance
to
touchdowns. Get a wild card. Yeah, I mean that's your boy Jordan Love that
you
gave up
30,
on.
He's got 30 touchdowns for the year. I saw a stat that I think Aaron Rodgers threw like 28, 27 touchdowns his first year. So, hey man.
Well, I mean,
it's coming.
I appreciate that you joined me in the in the Justin Field fan club, but for you to abandon Jordan Love after 6 weeks or so,
I abandoned the Packers, not Jordan Love. I stopped gambling on them because they kept losing. So I was like, I'm done with the Packers. I wasn't saying I was done with like Jordan Love, lock him up, hide the key. I was just saying that because I was done betting the Packers. They lost like 3 straight, and I was like, I'm done betting the Packers, man. I gave up on them. Jordan Love wasn't playing too well, wasn't doing so hot. Gotta let him bake, man. Gotta put him in the oven. Gotta let him bake. So I'm holding on to my Jordan Love key card. I'm holding on to it, putting it in my back pocket. I'm gonna put it in the drawer. I don't know. I think the Packers, if they win, they're in the playoffs. I think they need some shit to happen, if I'm not mistaken. There's a bunch of different playoff scenarios.
One of the things that they needed was the Steelers to beat the Seahawks to start out with this past weekend, and that happened. Yeah. I feel like the Steelers. I know we were talking about the Packers, but I feel like for the Steelers, the last couple of years, like when they've needed something to happen, it has happened for them. So it was kind of nice for them to repay the favor to the Packers in that sense. But yeah, Packers take care of business. They're still alive, and for the final time, I will say, we shall see, and we'll talk about it next week here on episode number 72 or 73 of Stats Over Politics. But Jaevon, before we get out of here on episode number 71 of Stats Over Politics, it's time to hear those picks with Vonny's Hotline. Let's hear it.
All right. So the last hotline was like 2 weeks ago.
And I will say, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my note in my phone has you at 20-10 overall after 5 weeks of Hotline Part 2. So 20-10 on the Hotline, doing pretty well, hitting 2/3 of your picks.
Went 3-1, or went 500 on the last Hotline that we had.
3-3, yep.
Lot to unpack here. This parlay was the parlay. The New Year's parlay didn't do so well for us. But that's nevertheless, so we're going to kind of build it over time. All right, first leg. Taking Washington money line. Hopping on the train. I'm going to be part of the bandwagon. UW, Penix, whatever you want to. Kalen DeBoer. I've been watching Adunze torch secondaries pretty much all year. Pac-12 I believe, was probably the best conference this whole entire year, just based off quarterback play and how they've been playing. Washington, I think they're plus 160, plus 167 is what I'm seeing right now. Probably will round out to plus 170 by kickoff, if I'm not mistaken. But line's moving up. I'm seeing 5, 4.5, 5 for the spread. Over under is 55, so I think Washington's going to do the majority of the scoring. It won't come from Michigan. I'm looking at it from the standpoint as Penix is a better quarterback. He's been able to consistently beat these good teams. Oregon, solid team. Texas, very, very solid team. And put up these kinds of numbers. I get Michigan is the number 1 team in the country, undefeated. Both teams are undefeated, so I think they have the better defense. But we've even seen with the NFL on, it kind of comes down to how good your quarterback is. Your defense can be so good for so long, but if your offense is going to be able to produce points at a high level, you're not going to be able to win a game. So I'm rolling with Washington. And is Washington a Cinderella story, even though they're Pac-12 champs and they're the number 2 team in the country? I'm not so sure it's that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, regardless of who wins this national championship. Exactly. It's going to be an undefeated team, so it's hard to paint a Cinderella story.
So I'm gonna roll. I'm walking with Washington money line. Give it to me, plus 170. Love it. Tomorrow there is a hoops game that I'm very intrigued by. We are going to scroll on down the line. We're gonna head to OKC here. We're gonna take the Celtics minus 2.5 over the Oklahoma City Thunder. OKC has been playing out of its freaking mind lately. I think they're the number 2 team in the West, but you know who has the best team or who has the best record in the NBA? It's the Boston Celtics. I think when JB, JT, and Kristaps Porzingis all play together, they're a very tough team to beat. And there's been a guy by the name of Derek White who's been playing out of his mind. Not sure if they're going to give him the nod for the All-Star, but Derek White has been playing at an All-Star caliber level all year. So, but there's another guy by the name of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I believe is like second in the league in scoring. He's averaging 30 with ease. Chet Holmgren, who's probably the front runner for MVP, or not MVP, Rookie of the Year this year, has been averaging about 17, 18 points a game, averaging like 2-3 blocks a game, which is pretty sneaky. Didn't know if he would be averaging that many this early in the season in his career. But kind of to lean on him for the defensive side is huge for OKC, given that they don't really have a true big man. But you got guys like J-Dub, Jalen Williams, who's been playing out of his fucking ass all year. But I do like the Celtics on the road here. I'm going to take them at minus 2.5 for that second game. We're gonna go to football because everybody loves football, right? Lines are kind of still fresh here. Wow. Bengals. I might just give you. We're gonna do.
Are the lines still too early for the NFL?
No, I'm just kind of looking at who's doing. What are these lines looking like? Wow. Wow.
Okay, so just to recap real quickly while you're getting to the next ones. So far we have the Washington money line.
3.
All right, Buffalo -3. Let's hear why.
I'm looking at each time the Dolphins play a team that's like, hey, this team's really good. They should be able to beat them, right? Chiefs in London. This is like a team that they're, battling for a number one seed at that point in time. Mahomes they don't really have a great first half. I believe the Dolphins were winning at halftime. I think it was 14-7. And, Mahomes kind of comes out and just does Mahomes magic. And they end up winning outright. I think it was 21-14 was the final score of that game. The Ravens, we just saw them get 56 hung on their head. And they're supposed to be the number 2 seed in football. They played the Buffalo Bills earlier this year and got curb stomped. So, Buffalo is playing for something. They're trying to win get the number 2 seed after a pretty abysmal start this season and kind of turned it around with a 4-game win streak. So, I like Buffalo Bills here at -3 on the road. They are on the road, but I think they'll cover on the road too. So, that's 3 games down that we have. Wow. Am I gonna? No, I can't do that.
So thus far, we have the Washington Huskies money line, the Celtics -2.5, and the Bills -3.
It's hard because there's a bunch of teams that aren't playing for shit.
Oh, yeah, like the Niners and the Rams.
Give me the Texans -1. CJ Stroud is back. The offense looked horrid when you had Case Keenum in there. I get he's a veteran backup quarterback in this league, but he's a veteran backup for the reason. CJ Stroud is the difference maker for this offense. He probably has rookie of the year with his name on it. They just have to announce it. And the Texans are trying to win the division. Now, they do need the Jags to lose, and they have to win. I did see a report from Adam Schefter, or was it Ian Rappaport, one of those two guys, came out and said that Lawrence is probably going to be playing this week. Whenever the Jags and Titans play, it's weird. It always gets weird, especially if the Jags are going on the road. So, I think it was a couple of years ago that the Colts that lost to the Jags. It was the last game of the year, and like Carson Wentz, that was like his last game as a Colt, and then he ended up getting cut. Was that against the Jags? I think it was.
Yeah. I think it was in Jacksonville, yeah.
This game, a lot of implications going on, and I love CJ Stroud. As slight favorites on the road, they're -1, so give me the Texans -1 here.
Wow. Wait, yeah, hold on. And just to follow up on that game that you mentioned, I remember that vividly now because that was the end of the Urban Meyer season in Jacksonville when the Jags were absolute dog shit. And for the Colts to lose that game in Jacksonville with a playoff spot on the line, that was basically the end of Carson Wentz as we know it.
Yeah, now Carson Wentz, he's a backup in – where is he at now?
Yeah, I think he's out of the league right now.
No, he's a backup somewhere. I just don't know where it is.
I'll look it up.
I think he's a Ram. I think he's a Ram.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a Ram.
Is he really? All I can think about, you know what, Jaevon? You just nailed that. He is a Los Angeles Ram. Wow. All I could think about when I thought of Carson Wentz was that picture of him like wearing the Eagles helmet and the Washington practice jersey and the Colts shorts. Like that's all I could remember. Yeah, you're right. He's a Rams backup right now. That's crazy. I thought he was out the league.
Did you know, fun fact, that Carson Wentz is a 5-time FCS champion? There you go. You said you're going with the Bears. What's the numbers there?
Give me the Bears money line +145. The Bears have been on the streak lately. I think they're on like a 2-game win streak, if I'm not mistaken. Justin Fields has been playing out of his ass. A lot of people would stay the fuck away from this game, but I just have a hunch that the Bears are going to win and ruin the Packers' playoff chances. No, Aaron Rodgers saying that the Bears, I own you. I still own you. And, after the Packers beat the Bears earlier this year, Aaron Rodgers was like, thank you for keeping, everything kind of intact. The ownership, keeping the ownership intact. I think the Bears are going to just try and, they're playing, I don't know if they're playing to make the playoffs, but they're trying to, keep the Packers out of the playoffs. And the Packers have been a very inconsistent team. Not as of late, but I'm seeing some flaws here and there. I think the Bears have been playing as good as anybody in the NFC lately. The 2-game stretch.
The NF. Okay.
There
you go. All right. Yeah, I got you.
So give me the Bears, man. +1. Give me the Bears money line.
Khalil ain't going like that.
All
right, last pick. Let's hear it.
I don't know, man. Do we gotta?
You know what I'm a little surprised by right now is we got college football, we got the NBA, we got the NFL, but no college basketball.
I mean, there's no lines out there's no lines out for college basketball right now. I probably would have been on a game on Saturday, but there's no lines out for that. Do I go basketball tomorrow? Let's see.
Yeah, let's get another NBA pick. So
the Kings play tomorrow.
The Kings do play tomorrow. They play Charlotte without LaMelo Ball on a 10-game losing streak. So the Kings will probably lose that one, right?
I don't see the line. The Kings probably lose. That's crazy. I don't see a line for NBA for them tomorrow. Wow. Let's go here and look. We're shopping right now, guys. We're shopping. We're looking for the best lines possible. Wow. Kings are coming off a huge win over Memphis the other night, too. Shout out to the Kings. We had Kings money line the other night, guys.
Hell yeah.
Jesus Christ. They're favored by 16 and a half points. Not what we wanted to hear. College basketball tomorrow. Let's see. Let's look. We are soul searching. We are shopping right now. Bear with me.
Hey, everyone should bear with Toddy just because, this is the final pick, but this could be the pick that makes it or breaks it because, as Jaevon said earlier, he went 3-3 in the last hotline. If you make a bad judgment and you rush to make a pick, then that's where that 3-3 record could easily be 2-4. Or it could be 4-2 if you make the right picks. So, Jaevon, what are you looking at right now? Are you looking at the NBA? Are you looking at the NFL? What? I think the better question that I can ask is just what goes through your head when you're making these picks, and what kind of helps you decide on what's a good line and what isn't?
It's kind of just where I'm looking at college basketball right now. I'm just looking at.
Are the lines out there though?
I'm only seeing games for tomorrow, but I don't love any games tomorrow though. That's my thing. It's like
okay, so that's the first thing is if you don't love it,
don't love it.
Force
bet it.
Yeah, and like obviously for our listeners, like not everyone has a betting segment like yourself, but for kind of the casual bettors, they could apply this when they're making a parlay because you always say parlay at your own risk. But you don't really want to make a 5-leg parlay if you don't love every leg because, I mean, it's unlikely that every single one hits. And so you want to go in with the utmost confidence, I would imagine.
Okay. Here I got one.
All right, let's hear it.
NFL game. Give me the boys -13.
Disgusting, but all right.
It is disgusting. However, I'm looking at when the Cowboys are favored by like double digits. They usually cover. That's going back to when they played the Panthers, when they played. Usually the Giants games are very good examples. Even when they were like 17.5-point favorites, they beat the piss out of the freaking Giants. Basically, every time they play a shit team, they usually beat the shit out of them. I'm banking on that. Cowboys need to win to get to the NFC title or to hold the NFC East crown. I feel like this will be like a style point game. The Commanders are playing for nothing, really. Maybe just to help out the Eagles, but this is a road game for them. But even when they play a team on the road that's not good, they usually beat the shit out of them. And that's kind of been the tale of two Cowboys. Whenever the Cowboys play a team with a losing record, they usually win convincingly. When they play against a team like the Eagles or the Niners. They didn't get blown out by the Eagles, but they damn sure got blown out by the Niners.
Damn sure.
Lost a questionable game against the Cardinals early in the season. But I'm just looking at it from the stat standpoint of usually when they're favored by double digits, they usually cover the spread. And usually when they're favored by double digits is a team that's not really that good. And they beat the shit out of those teams. So I think we see the Cowboys kind of roll here, get some style points that probably might not be needed, but kind of make their stamp on the NFC East. And I'm gonna take the Cowboys minus 13 here.
All right, and just for everyone, let's get a recap.
All right, so we got Washington money line plus 170. That's going to be the Monday night game next week. We got the Celtics minus 2.5 and minus 110. We have the Bills minus 3 on Sunday Night Football at minus 110 against the Miami Dolphins. We have the Texans minus 1 on Saturday night. They will be traveling on the road against Indianapolis. We have Chicago money line. That is probably the riskiest one on here. And then we have the Cowboys minus 13. I think the Cowboys are probably going to beat the shit out of the Commanders because I don't think the Commanders are that good. Commanders are playing for anything. They're probably going to fire their head coach. They're going to clean house. They're just a team that needs to just look at the future and just build everything. They're not too far from the Panthers. So, going to take the Cowboys minus 13 there.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for episode number 71 of Stats Over Politics. We appreciate all of you for tuning in, whether if it's on X, on Instagram, or here on YouTube. We appreciate all of you for locking in with us after the college football playoff semifinals. Make sure to give us a like on YouTube. It helps us a lot. And you enjoy the show, hit subscribe to get notifications when we go live. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Stats Over Politics and on X at Stats or Politics. See all the great content that Kevin's putting out there. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on all podcast platforms. And if you're enjoying the show, give us those 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. As you've been tuned into episode number 71 of Stats Over Politics. For Jaevon, Kevin Dent, and Garry Singh, I'm your host, Sean Holko. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate all of you, and we will catch you on another episode of Stats Over Politics. Later, everybody.
Peace.